Thanks for coming today. So this is Disruptive Startups. This is probably the biggest group we've run today. This is the sixth one. I'd like to send out a special thanks to Laura, Constance and Katrina for running everything. So if we could give them a quick round of applause. Thanks so much. Just want to wish you guys a happy new year. We're all about entrepreneurship here. This is a not-for-profit organisation. It's run for you guys. We don't charge. So we're just trying to create an environment where Melbourne entrepreneurs can come together and sort of share ideas on, finance, product development, staffing, HR, sales, marketing, whatever it is. Obviously, if you've got any questions at the end, have a chat to James or just ask a question Q&A. Try to ask questions that help other people as well. So if you've got a question that's going to help the entire audience, I'd love to hear it. But I'd just like to welcome James. Thanks very much. Thanks, guys. For coming on board, mate. So I think the way we'll run the interview is we'll just have a chat to James. Afterwards, we'll do a bit of Q&A. But the basis I wanted to start with was probably James's background, but also how he sort of financed the business, because that's a big issue for entrepreneurs. They've got great ideas, they've probably got great execution, but they haven't got the capital to raise and even to sustain what you sustain, which is about how long?
3 years from starting to making money.
Right. Yeah, so you have a bit of backlog of capital.
Yeah, probably not enough,
yeah,
and not very much. So we didn't raise any money externally, so we're no VCs, no angels, none of that. So where it came from, my background, my role before this, I was a partner in a professional services company. I joined, I think it was about 6 person, built that up over about 4 years, and we sold that out to a publicly listed Australian company. When we sold that, I guess what I'd been working on in that business, there was elements of it which is how we engaged with the supplier markets. We did a lot of buying on behalf of the ANZs and Macquaries and Fairfaxes and things like that, in terms of buying consultants and advisors on their behalf. And it was a disaster. We were sitting there Googling people and running spreadsheets and access databases and 3 versions of PeopleSoft, and we were doing exactly what they do. We were probably a little bit more efficient at it, and we ran a lot of service around it, so that was good. We sold it to them, and I basically said we should automate this. They weren't interested in automating it. They quite liked it how it was, because we could charge a lot of money for it, even though I don't know that we should have been. And so I got a carve out in the acquisition of that company to say I could start something on the side because it was non-conflicting. So I did that, had an 18-month earnout. So about 6 months into that, I started designing this business, which is called Magnetized Markets. It's basically an online marketplace. It's been through lots of iterations, so what it is now is not what it was 5 years ago, either in brand, in pretty much every respect. So basically, I ran it in parallel for the first 12 months. I went off, took a month off work and designed what I thought, and I'm not a developer. I'm not a developer at all. But I understand, I guess, data and logic. So I built a flow, took up half my house, I just white papered the house, drew it out, and then just wheeled it through as many developers as I could find until I found someone that I liked. And half my salary went to him. So I went to work and he developed. And then it got to a point where we were about 3 weeks off going live, and I went, we're golden, this thing will be nuts. And I quit my job. And didn't go nuts. Yeah. So there was 2.5 years before we made any money at that point.
Right.
Any substantial money, like a few grand here, a few grand there. So I had a bit of money, I guess, out of selling the business. I had some savings, and it was lean, very, very lean.
Just cut all the garbage, the stuff that you didn't need, and just reduce the expenses.
Well, there was no reduce because we never had them.
Yep.
So it was just, we just didn't get to do a lot of stuff. So yep. We never advertised. We never did any marketing that cost money. It was a lot of just going out and pressing the flesh. And we got some great engagement. People loved the technology. It's just that the commercial model we were running didn't work. And that was the lesson for us. It was, and I guess that was one of the big things for me. Is like, it's fine to look at a market dynamic, which is how big organisations buy from thousands of consultants out there, and how do you work out who the expert is. And our concept was, this whole concept of search is overrun now, it's too diluted. What if we could create an attraction-based marketplace? So instead of me going and looking for what I want, I can actually build a little honeypot and attract from the market the 3 or 4 people I should be talking to. So that was the fundamental concept. Lovely concept. People loved using it because it was really good, but how to get people to pay for it was a nightmare.
Right.
Yeah, we went through 5 different iterations of the technology, 5 different commercial platforms. Every one of those had anything from 1 to 10 different variations. So we were pivoting and pivoting and pivoting until we got a model that worked.
There's probably 2 things that I really want to explore, just from an entrepreneurial perspective within finance. One is, you had to have a bit of bankroll for that 2 to 3 years, but also, when you started acquiring customers, that's the other aspect I find really interesting, because entrepreneurs, you need, that's where the funding of the application comes from, and you keep developing from there. So in terms of your ATV, your average transaction value, was it high or low? Pretty high given your customers, wasn't it?
No. Initially, it was like our first commercial model was $20, $60, $100. They were buying sales.
Right, pretty low. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
So it was a volume game.
Yep.
And we were maybe making $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. When you've got 3 staff working full time,
yep.
and you've got business expenses, it doesn't go very far. So I was ostensibly paying their salaries, and I'm lucky to have some really smart, really capable people that wanted to play.
Yep.
And they were getting paid, I don't know, 10%, 20% of what they could command in the market.
Yeah.
So, and they could probably earn some pretty good coin, but yeah, for probably the first 6 months, everyone hurt. Once we started getting a bit more money in, then I guess you're always the last one to get paid as a founder.
Yeah, sure. It's always hard to keep really good people in that early stage, and that's, I think we were talking about before, trying to convince people of this dream that's inside your head, and you're one guy by yourself. I presume is that the case?
Yeah, so it was me for, I guess, the first 18 months really, in terms of I'd engaged a developer, but it was very much as on a contract basis. Well, that's not entirely accurate, but the dynamic was very much a contract. Like he came in, I wheeled it through, 30 or 40 developers. I gave up, it was too hard.
Wow.
They were coming in with these 100 grand, 150 grand, and that was on like alpha. We weren't even getting to be at beta by then. And I was out with my girlfriend, and her girlfriends were talking about meeting guys and how hard it was, and one of them had come up with some idea about, just come up with the 5 attributes you want and put it out there. And that night at about 2 in the morning, I'm sitting there, I went, I'll try anything. So I just came up with what are the 5 words I want, and I started Googling this string, and randomly came up with this bloke's CV, and pinged him through some archaic website.
Elance.
No, I've never even heard of it since or before. It was just some developer website. And yeah, he was awesome. So he came in, he's the ex-GM of iPrimus, so really good commercial background, kind of run it at a board level, and then went, I don't really like hanging out with people that much, I just want to go and develop. Probably the best generalist developer I've ever come across. But he came in, looked at it, and said, I reckon it's going to cost X. And he said, hold on a second, could I have a cup of tea? And he walked up and down for about half an hour and came back and said, are you trying to run a marketplace that would do this and this and this? I said, pretty much. I said, all right, I'll do it for half if you give me 10%. So I think we should work together.
Cut him in, yeah, someone's
and,
right.
And he's awesome. No one's left, but he's definitely not there.
Great. I've just got a quick question. Put your hand up if you're an entrepreneur. We've got a few, haven't we? That's great. Just leave your hand up if you still have a company. I'll put my hand down. I guess the thing I'm really interested in is a turning point when you hit that sort of hockey stick graph, when you become really profitable and you get that energy, you get that culture, that commitment, the real revenues start hitting and you just go on fire. What was the sort of turning point for you within the company? From when you, sorry to cut you off, from when you went from that 2 or 3 year period of no profits or very low profits to you just went bam, straight up?
I think there's 2 steps that are really important, and I didn't appreciate this until probably quite recently. There's the point at which you're not really making any money, so to be honest, it's stressful and it's hard, but you can kind of pull the pin and walk away, and there's no big deal. Because we were running a transactional model, there was kind of no long-term commitments. The big spin for us was people loved the technology, but they wanted to license it, they didn't want to pay to use it on a transactional basis. So suddenly we went and approached some groups and we said, look, we showed them what we thought was possible. They looked at it and said, that's ideal, needs to have this and this and this. I got them to fund the last bit of development. And we were running a balance sheet that our financial projections were 2 to 3 weeks ahead. Like we were so close to not surviving for so long. For them to give us a little lump of money to pay for us for 6 months to finish this off was awesome. But that was survival money. So then we signed our first contract, and then there's this interesting space which lasted for us at about 12 months where we were suddenly making money, but for the first time we were also making commitments. And so we were signing these licenses and contracts with organisations, and it's like, great, we've got cash, but it's like, it's not actually enough cash to run the business profitably. But we now have to run the business. We can't pull the pin. Like we've got a 12-month commitment or a 24-month commitment, and they can walk away, but we can't. So suddenly it was like, almost, it was a rod for our own back, because having a little bit of money was actually more stressful than having none from a commercial obligation point of view. So suddenly it's like, I can't just give up. Like I have to deliver on this contract, or I have to just trash my name and just go, I'm the guy that walked away.
Right.
So that was really hard. Then when we got to the point where suddenly we were making enough money that we were getting paid, and that just became a volume game. That just became getting enough customers and getting enough coverage and enough spread.
So that's just lead generation, putting them through the pipeline, conversion optimizing, and just watching your margins. Obviously, because you're SaaS, your margins are quite good. It's because you're scaling and you get economies of scale. Once a product's built, it's really just getting out in the marketplace, user acquisition to the lowest price, and then just putting them through the funnel, maximizing value for the customer and for the company.
We took, I guess, a few punts, but we're startups, so why wouldn't you? One was we tried to buy market share, so we didn't charge premiums in going and acquiring clients. Our major clients now are paying 10 times more than they were 3 years ago, quite happily. So we're charging more now than we thought we could.
Yep.
But we charge less than we thought we could to acquire clients. The other thing which we did is we went in on I guess we're not on a traditional, just transactional, find a client, sell something to them, find another client, sell something to them. Our strategy was to go in on really key influential organisations and then work through them. So the way it works in summary, in government, you've got all these government agencies and you've kind of got a peak body that does some purchasing on behalf of everyone. So we went and said, we will gut ourselves on pricing to get the top guy, because then what we ended up doing, we do one sale, and then there's 150 organisations that are using the software even though they haven't bought it. And then it became a case of going, now we've got 150 people we can go and talk to and say, you're already using it for this 10% of your purchasing. What about your other 90%? So then we really drove an upgrade platform. That took about 12 months to kick in really and get value.
Yep.
And now it's fantastic. I mean, where we're at now is we get order forms, we don't have sales processes. So we now get organisations contacting us just saying, can we please upgrade now?
Great, it's all streamlined.
Yeah, it's all streamlined, but it's also just that they've had this exposure and it's now just part of how they operate. So then it's like, well, it's like giving them a mobile phone for international calls, but they still have to use a Chroma Light for local dialing. And at some point they go, can't we just use this cool phone for everything? And that was kind of the strategy we were running with, which was high risk, but it
paid off. Yeah, absolutely. So 1 to 10 in terms of what you could have charged in the end. Was it a mistake not to charge that earlier on, or was it like a branding and marketplace positioning thing back then to acquire the customer and then to charge more later on?
I don't know. Could we have charged more early on? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe we could have. I guess partly we didn't know the value of it. You know, people come up with, you sit there and we just launched a new product on Monday. It's our first new major platform since we've actually had a viable company. And even that, like you can go and you can do the maths and you can do all of the things that you would learn to do in an MBA about how to price something. And then it just comes down to what would they pay? And at that point in time, we were no one with an idea that was controversial, far from proven, and it was risky for them. So for us to then slap a big price tag on it, I don't know, I wasn't confident that we could have slapped a big price tag on it, and we needed them. If we didn't get them, we were going to shut up shop. Because I actually started looking for a job at one point. Like I was going out there, probably halfway through, so it's been around 5 years. So about 2.5 years in, I started going and getting interviews because I was like, we can't keep going.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah.
So where's it all at now? What's sort of the next step? And I mean, you're looking to keep develop new products, new markets, geographically expanding.
Where's it at now?
Step? Yeah.
I love it now. Like we're at this really fun phase now where So we've got about 350 enterprise clients. We managed about $450 million worth of purchasing in the last 12 months. We've just got listed in the Deloitte Fast 500. We won most of the innovation awards in the industry in the last 12 months. So we've suddenly gone from no one to just a really nice position to be in, but we're still fresh enough that people are coming to us.
I went to your webpage, I scrolled down, it's like half page full of awards. I'm like, okay. So
yeah.
we had a few.
Yeah, that's
like Smart Startup, there was Deloitte's Fast 50, which is Australia. There's
Fast 500, which
Fast
is
500,
Asia-Pac.
yeah.
So I think we're 107th overall and 17th in Australia.
There's Antil as well, 100.
That was early on.
Okay.
Was early on.
Did you apply for these, or they just came to you because of what you were doing in the marketplace?
You've totally got to apply for them. It's marketing for sure.
Yeah, there was I can't remember where it was. Josiah was telling me about it. He's the founder of CIPSA, and he said that there's a 30 under 30, like really well-known, great entrepreneurial companies.
Got one hit.
And oh, there we go. Okay, what are you working on?
Oh, so I worked for 2 educational businesses I worked on. So one was in tutoring a high school diploma called International Baccalaureate.
Yep.
Another one I worked on with this guy called UMate. Is in like helping high school kids get into medicine.
Okay, cool. I don't know if I can finish this story now because we found that a lot of the companies in the 30 under 30 they went bankrupt and
But our main company now aren't those 2.
yeah, we're working on something else. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you got to apply for the awards, obviously, but I just thought it was interesting. You had so many awards and Deloitte's and yes. Sorry about that.
I'm personally.
We'll chat afterwards. I'll buy a beer. Yeah, so
You've got to apply for them. I think it's also you've got to be selective in which ones you go for. So I think there's ones that we went for in the early days that I wouldn't go for now because by association is that the brand we want to be under now.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's being selective in that you don't want too many awards, but I don't know. It's been really
good
for
positioning.
us. Well, for us,
Yeah.
it's a 1%er. It's people look at us, they look at our idea, and maybe not quite so much now, but not up until maybe 6 or 9 months ago, there was people saying, look, I kind of all like it, but we're Australian, we're still pretty risk averse, we're still pretty scared, we like to be third. So it's a case of saying, well, what are the other things that can build confidence in someone to say, I'm not making a silly decision here. So, yes, it seems like a good idea, yes, it's the right price point, yes, I've spoken to a customer and they've won these awards and suddenly there's all this external validation that this is actually a reasonable thing to be doing.
yeah.
So for us, it was the 1%.
I think you really got to keep that in mind as well because what pushes someone to buy a product. We meet a lot of customers through CIPSA. I meet a lot of the customers. We have lunch with them, and like they have a great concept that can really change how the industry is working. But do people want to change it? Are they, if they implement this system and it screws up their job and they get fired, or there's that risk or that perception of risk, do they really want to take that risk for something that's going to save them X amount of time?
I think
Sometimes
that's such a massive issue, and that was a really hard one for us. And you look at the companies, and it's like the ones that the startup press love to talk about, from 0 to 50 million in 6 months or something crazy. We're not those guys. But we've also got contracts now that go out 13 years. So we've got massive stability of income, but we're not through the roof sexy in terms of this crazy hockey stick. But what you were pointing out there, this whole idea of, is it something that you think is better versus something they want? I get approached quite a lot now by people, and I basically count how many times I count how many times they use the word should. They should do this, and they should do this, and then they should do this, and they should do this, and it's like, yeah, but do they want to? Because if they don't, you're pushing it uphill. And one of the challenges we had was when we went out, I thought we were going to go and do a sales process. We were not in a sales process. We were in an education process. So for 12 months, we were lucky that we got our first 2 clients and just they had enough vision to see what was possible. But then I was just going and speaking to people, and there was no sale at the end as an expectation. It was educate them about what was possible. And then they have to go away and think about it and question it. And over time, they move. But it's like, if you just want to make money, go and do something that 3 other people have already proven works and just do it slightly better. If you actually want to be disruptive, lock in for the long haul because it's slow. People are slow to change, and I think you nailed it. It's a really challenging space to be in.
I just find it really fascinating you said it's education, because that's one of the scariest things I think a lot of startups, and particularly disruptive startups, have to face, is that people don't go and type into Google search that kind of product because it hasn't existed before. Mm-hmm. The status quo is to do it via paper or manually, or to deal with these esoteric systems that all interlink through Microsoft spreadsheet, which is not the greatest way to do things. Yeah. And people don't type that into Google. People do type some things into Google, but not that product. And so when you're faced with educating the entire marketplace with hundreds of touch points, these really long drawn out sales cycles, you inflate your costs and you reduce your revenues and customer acquisition. So, content strategy is a really good way to deal with that, just from my perspective. We use it a lot at AppStar. Just educating the marketplace, building that relationship where people know you, like you, and trust you. But I think as an entrepreneur, you need to be really careful that you, it's a balance between it's what they need and what they want. If you try to tell people what they need, they're not going to buy from you, but they'll buy it straight away if it's what they want. And that's why if you look at marketing agencies, there's all these companies that do SEO. And that's because your keywords, if you look, people understand very quickly, number one position gets me the most clicks. But if you look at some of the more complex, more difficult to understand marketing tools out there, like your lead nurturing, content marketing, RTB, these are really complex marketing systems that no one knows about, so they don't buy them. So the marketing agencies for those things are about 1 to 10 for the SEO companies. So if you're working on a startup, this is just my opinion entirely, just be real careful, because you got to strike that balance between what people want and what they need. Otherwise, you're fighting an uphill battle with education. Is that about what you're saying?
Look, I think some of it is, but I think the nature of the people in the room in terms of startups, there's a difference to me to beginning a new business, like launching a new business has a whole lot of challenges around it. To me, I guess, and maybe it's my language, but when I hear startup, I'm thinking people that are trying to mess with the program. I'm hearing people that are trying to do something that maybe it's more of an idea, as opposed to I'm going to set up the 5th carpet shop in Carpet Street. It's like it's a very different psyche. So I think it is important to get a sense of where do you fit on the buying cycle, and do you even fit? Do people see that as an issue? It's been interesting for us. So this second platform that we've put out, we've got an awesome relationship with our clients, with amazing engagement from a client point of view. So we just went back to them and said, what aren't we doing that you think we could do that would be really good for you guys? And we got a bunch of stuff, and we looked at it and went, I don't even know what half of that is, and I don't want to do that, and we don't understand that. And then we got these 5 things here, we think we could really nail that. And then we went and got them to prioritise it. The one I wanted to win came last, which was really annoying, but really good feedback, because if we hadn't gone and validated it, I was totally sunk in on going and building this particular concept. But what they came back with was a really familiar problem to them that, in the way it's been done historically, 90% of the market is not addressing because the solutions are really expensive. Yeah. So it's basically around how they manage their contract.
That's a really smart way to do things, I think. We with some customers, they're working on a product. I can't talk about it. I'm under NDA. So I can't talk about their product, but I can talk about their process. They would take the screens and the prototypes, the UX, what had been designed for them, how their application and product would look in the final stages before it was built, and they would take it to their target market, and they would do a presentation, say, how do you feel about that? Would you be comfortable paying this price? And then they get the marketplace validation, and if they were to go forward from there, it would be on the basis that the feedback was strong and good, and that people willing to pay that price point and implement that system. On top of that's as a pre-sales sort of tool. A lot of entrepreneurs say, this is exactly what the marketplace wants, I've got to build it, and then they throw it out there, and just nothing happens. And then they pivot and pivot and pivot. But if you have the environment where you can actually go up to the customer and ask them, is this what you want, and actually interview them, you might find that your perspective of what they want is very different from what they actually want. And you've got to marry those two together.
And I think the hard thing is getting the questions right. We did a really great user experience testing process in our first year. There's a book, I don't know if you guys are into UIs, been around for years, called Don't Make Me Think. It's a really great book. Gives you just basically an A to Z on how to run UI testing. And I did it, like my old man's nearly 80, I got a bunch of his friends in, and we said we'll buy some beers and pizzas and see if a bunch of 80-year-old blokes who don't like computers can use it. I got friends who are teachers, friends who are builders, friends who are lawyers, like we did all of that. But it was the wrong question. We ended up with a system that was just beautiful to use. but we didn't ask them if they'd pay for it. And we didn't go to the people. We've got all these people to do it in this kind of, if we can get them to use it, then someone sitting in an office can use it for sure. And we were right on that front. But what we didn't do is go and ask the hard questions of the people in the office who we're going to be selling it to, and ask them what they'd pay for it. Yeah. And family and friends are the worst. I've got some very close people in my life who are my target audience in that initial product, not now. And they're like, this is great, Jamie, go for it. I believe in you. If you think it can work, I trust you. And like 18 months later, I'm like, why don't you use it? It's not really for me, dude. Like, it's a great idea, but it's not really for me. It's like, I wish you'd said that to me 18 months ago. Yeah, which is so, I think part of it is asking the right questions and sometimes not being the one that asks the questions, because I know for me, I can get so invested in wanting a certain outcome. Julianne works with me, she's got this big grin on me because it's like, I know sometimes I can probably facilitate a discussion to get somewhere near the answer that I want. And you don't want to do that when you're trying to find out if you're about to jump into a hole. So I think sometimes getting someone else to run that process for you is enormously powerful. And you don't have to pay someone $10,000 as a consultant. Most of you will have a friend you can get to do it. But get someone else to do it who doesn't really care.
Just get objective information.
Yeah, and someone who's actually going to, not try and facilitate or facipulate it in a certain direction.
Reminds me of The Simpsons. There was this episode with Mr. Burns, and he wanted to sue someone, and he had about 20 lawyers in the room, presumably on some huge amount of money, wearing their full expensive suits, and he's like, I want to sue this person, is it a good idea? They said, yes. And he says, are you just all yes men? They said, yes. And you need to be careful you don't get confirmation bias within yourself or from other people. And you need to get objective information on the product you're building, because you could just be one pivot away from 6 figures, 7 figures per year. And it's pretty incredible, because once you hit that nail on the head, it's amazing how quickly things can go if you're in the right position and you leverage it in the right way. And I've seen it happen. I just think that's a really interesting thing, perspective, and not being emotionally committed to one particular product or outcome, and actually saying, I need to be objective on how I develop this in the marketplace.
Which is really hard, because that's part of the craziness, I think, of running a startup, is you've got to do all of these inconsistent things. So on one hand, you have to detach emotionally. On the other hand, your greatest asset is your passion and your emotion. And it's like, so it's not this linear process if you go, I'm just going to be really detached and I don't really care and I'm just going to make this successful and make money. It's just like, no, you also have to believe and be passionate and see stuff that other people aren't seeing, and keep going when people are telling you, dude, you walked away from a really good salary to a really dumb idea, what are you doing? And often there isn't any rationality to why you're going. But if you're just doing it because you're passionate and you don't let some rationality come in, then you're just a crazy entrepreneur that's going to go bankrupt. So to me, that's part of the challenge of the balance, is how to keep both of those parts of yourself as a founder, but more broadly you as a company, balancing the passion and the belief with if it's not working. Well, we've killed 5 platforms. Absolute, complete, packaged up, in some cases award-winning, thousands of people that love them. Well, I guess I was really blunt from the beginning. It's like, if you're not willing to let stuff go, this isn't going to work. And we don't agree. Like one of Rob, he's the main developer for us. One of his catch lines is, if we agree all of the time, one of us doesn't need to be here. It's,
was he pointing at you, or?
Usually he is, but it's not always the outcome. So I think there's that balance. But for us it was go out, be passionate, run it, but then be willing to look at the facts and go, you know what, it's not working. So kill it.
Right.
Or shelve it, or ice it, or do something. We just shut down 2 weeks ago what was our second platform. And that's the last of the platforms that we'll be putting out of the market. But they're hard decisions to make.
A lot of pivots, five platforms, that's incredible.
5 completely independent platforms, and at least the first 2, we were tweaking those way more than they needed to be tweaked.
Bells and whistles.
And just, I guess it was also a learning journey for us. It was our first full tech play as a startup.
Yep.
So there was a learning journey for us, and I guess I knew that, so I wasn't beating us up. It's like, we tried stuff, didn't work. Okay.
Yeah.
Chalk that up.
Cool. I sort of want to just step away from that at the moment, and I'm really fascinated by this idea of having a good idea and having great execution. And I meet a lot of people with really good concepts, a few people with really bad concepts, and a lot of people that can't execute properly. They can execute some stuff well. They might be really good with finance, they might be really good with people skills, they might be great with marketing, but they lack that really well-rounded personality to drive on each one of those fronts. What can you say in terms of your experience? Because obviously when you work in a desk job, you sort of focus like a laser beam on one task. You become the expert at that one thing, like a surgeon. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're such a generalist. How has that affected you? Has it been all about vision and idea, or has it been about your execution and how effectively you've done that?
I would say we've got a good idea and we've executed really, really well. I'm saying our idea is good. I don't think we're geniuses. We're not brilliant in our concept, but we've just executed it really well. And I guess for me, I was really conscious at the beginning as I wanted to build a company. I didn't want to be self-employed. And so day one, it's like, so what are all the functions of the company? And there's legal, there's finance, there's HR, there's all of the different, there's marketing, there's sales, there's development. And when you're one person, you've got to accept that you are completing all of those functions. And as and when you can engage other people to come into the business, then you can work out which bits they're going to take. But you can't just run a business without them. So for me, the business always had at least an awareness of all of the functions. Some of them was like, we're not doing anything in HR, and but there's an awareness of it. And then there's recognising your gaps. I mean, firstly, I can't develop, so that's clearly a gap. And I'm awful on the finance front. I get it. I can structure deals. I can do all of that. But paying bills on time, I don't even pay my own electricity bill on time. My admin is awful. So one of those things was like, if we're actually going to function, one of the unsexy things that has to happen is we need to be really tight on our admin. And a good lesson for me in that. So when we sold my last business, we actually increased the multiple of exit based on our accounting principles. So we went through the whole negotiation, got it to this value, and then we said, and now let's look at how tight the accounting is and how well it's going to integrate into your financial processes and how little commercial risk there is to you. And that was worth a significant amount of money. And we did that, that's deal structure. You go through, you work out a price, and then you keep adding new bits to it about where there's more value. But that taught me a very good lesson. The second lesson I got on that front was when we got bought, we then found out that they paid us this much. They actually had a bucket of money that was this much, and they wanted us to go and spend the rest of it in acquiring other companies. So I was like, awesome. Suddenly we're on the other side of the desk because we had the subject matter expertise. So we went out and said, they've got an awesome product, they've got a great brand, these guys are really good in the market. We came up with 7 companies that we thought were awesome. 6 of them never made it to a decision because from a due diligence point of view, their books were sloppy.
Right. We're talking about mergers and acquisitions here. Yeah. Now, is this Magnetized Markets or is this a previous company?
This is when we sold my previous company,
right.
BZ, which was how partly I funded it.
Right.
The creation.
That's one thing a lot of people don't think about as exits. We've got a consultant here today that actually talks about structuring deals to exit. I know a bit about M&A myself, and generally you don't want to be someone who wants to sell. Like if I'm buying your company, you don't want to say, buy me! You don't want to do that. You want to say, no, thank you. Because you never want to buy something that someone wants to sell. You want to play a bit of hard to get, even over 12 months. Because these guys, they usually hire business brokers, and that business broker will find a number of targets that they want to acquire, either for geographic position, strategic, for patents, or they want to hire the staff because of their talent. And you might be any number of those things, and you can lose a lot of money if you, they'll lowball you basically, and over time they'll up their price as they acquire all the targets. So if you are a good company and you know it, you want to keep the company yourself. If you want to sell, then you'll come across as desperate and your valuation will go down. So I know of a company that sold for 5 mil, something about this earlier. It could have sold for 25 mil. It's a $20 million mistake. So it's very easy to do. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah. And I guess I think what you're talking about there is the nuances of trying to do a deal, which is at the end of the journey. I think the thing which to me was black and white was on day one building the business for that process. So it's not going out to people saying, hey, buy me. I mean, we were a startup with no revenue and we had standard operating procedures. We had documented accounting principles.
Yeah.
We had a lot of stuff, like you're going through and you can download them off wherever. Download the due diligence process and start preparing for it. We had that, like David, when he joined us, you look at his job description, and he's been with us for 4 years, his job description just says, make sure we pass DD. That's it. That is his total JD. But it means that when someone comes in to look at us, and we might not even sell, like I love running.
I almost got caught up on all the acronyms there. So due diligence, DD, and JD job description. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So basically that we can make sure that when someone came in and looked at us, they could say, this is not dependent on Jamie or on Julianne or on Rob or on David. This is actually our business. But you have to do that at the beginning.
It's kind of the E-Myth where you want to standardise all the processes and the
massive fan of the E-Myth.
Great book, yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I, from my perspective, didn't have a huge amount of questions left. I just wanted to open up the forum to anyone to ask questions today. Anyone in particular want to raise your hand and jump up there? Anyone working on things they want to know a bit about marketing, sales, particularly in the SaaS arena? Here we go, Simon.
I had a few questions, but with the guy that you got on originally for 10%, how did you come to a 10% number? Is that something you discussed, or you just said 10%, or did you value the company, or just plucked it out of the air?
To be honest, I was pretty loose on equity. I'm a big believer in equity. I know how much it means to me. I think it's important. It was also the only leverage I had because I couldn't pay proper salaries. It was interesting. So I guess there were different points where I kind of thought, in 12 months' time, I think we're going to be good. And we get to 12 months' time and it's like, we're not. I think we should keep going. And I want you to keep going. So I'll give you some more equity. So I actually got a bit loose with it for a couple of years there. It was interesting at about the 3-year mark, once we realised, actually, you know what, I think this is going to happen. We actually sat down and actually ran the numbers and what were the opportunity costs and what were, like we did it properly. And we were actually accurate to within 1 or 2%, which I was really happy with. But to be honest, the 10% piece, in my head, I'd sort of thought 20 to 25%. He came up with 10, and I just went, okay, well that gives me, I've now got more in sort of the bucket of IT that I can either give to other people, or I can give to him over time as and when I need to re-incentivise him. I hope he doesn't watch this video.
So you mentioned that you pivoted 5 times before you got to the business model that you are at. So what made you get to that model? Was it speaking to customers a lot and validating your questions with them, or was it something else?
Look, there's some corkers. So the first one was called Expert Magnet, and it was this idea of attracting expertise from the market. People loved it. It just didn't make money. We got approached by one of the guys who said, I think your concept's brilliant. I don't know anything about consulting. I'm in heavy industry. I'd love to do what you're doing in my industry. And we said, great. And he actually asked if he could buy some software and go and do it himself. I said, that's crazy. Who's going to answer the phones? Who's going to do this? Come and join us, tip some money in, which was great because we were struggling. And it wasn't, we're talking, thousands of dollars, not $500,000. And, get involved, but he also had some skills that were really powerful for us. So we ran at that. That one was called I Find Suppliers. We launched at this conference, which was all about heavy industry suppliers. No, it's called Supplier Magnet, that's right. And 94% of people that walked up to us thought we sold magnets. That was kind of devastating. We never made a single cent off that. Everyone that we went and we were phoning people up saying, there's a sales opportunity for you. It's worth $60,000. I'll give you the sales lead for free, and you're the only one we're giving it to. No, mate, fax it. Like, it was just so out of sync with how that industry was operating. So you just had to deal with it. So it was rough, some of the information and the feedback loops we got. But I think it was just about, I guess, partly a bit of steely resolve and partly being just a bit thick and just keeping going. Because there's a while there where we probably shouldn't have. But there was enough positive feedback from users. It was just the commercial model. And then ultimately we went to someone and we said, look, what about this? And they just came back and said, we love it, but we want more control. We don't want to use some external website. If you license it, we're in.
So one thing I hear is there was flexibility all through when you were speaking to your customers and you.
And there still
Already
is. I mean,
also.
we're still, the reality is if we rest on our laurels, we'll get smashed by one of the big kids. And we are now in a position where we are up against some of the big kids, very big. So we just have to be faster than them. That's the number one thing we've got, is being fast. And being creative and not being constrained by how it's always been done. Did I answer your question?
You did.
Terry?
Jamie. Question, right? So you said that one of the main turning point was there was a moment of when you were doing small deals and your ass wasn't really on the line yet. You know what I mean? And then people started demanding or asking for 12-month or 24-month contracts, right? So here's my question, right? Because I think this is interesting. What was shifted, right? Because a lot of people, I imagine, could get to that point, and the confront of that might get them to back off. I say it right. So I'm saying, what shifted? Was it a big shift for you, or was it just a natural flow through?
Oh, look, for us it was partly survival, and it was partly about this will work. I mean, they want it, they really like it, they want to pay for it. And there was an element of survival, like no one else was offering us money. Other people had offered us money to do things that we didn't agree with, but this was consistent. It aligned to the strategy and the concept and the philosophy and the technology, and it wasn't until we'd really signed them that suddenly it was like, Christ, we need another 5 customers, because this one customer, that's just an obligation right now. That's actually not freedom. This is not financial freedom. This is a poorly paid obligation.
Did that take a personal shift though for you to push through?
I think it was definitely a personal shift, and I think the other thing there is just one of the challenges is interesting. I had lunch today with a bunch of the other co-founders, and I was asking them like, what's been the hardest bit, and a lot of them for them was like, I guess not having money has been really hard, and this and that. Clearly, that's a shared experience. I think the thing that's unique, if you structure it in a way where you're, I guess, an original founder and bring other people on, is carrying the responsibility of that they've put their trust in you. So for me, there was my own financial scenario, but then there was also feeling responsible for the fact that these other people had risked their scenarios. I mean, it got to the point where I knew where their kids' school fees were due, and we would balance our payments to try and make sure that all went like, I don't want to know that. Really, that was too stressful. So I'm very happy now that I have no idea when their school fees are due. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. You mentioned you're trying to get people who are risk averse, especially government. You said it was those little 1%. Was there anything else that that's a bit of a challenge in Australia too?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's about, there's a few things going on. One is actually having empathy with the scenario they're in. Like, people might be risk averse, they're not trying to be a pain in the ass. They do, I personally think most people want to do the right thing. So for us it was, sure, I want you to jump on board, but that's risky for you. So what can I do to help you manage your risk? So I'm a massive fan of advocating to them. It's like, call it a pilot, even if it's not a pilot, because then if it doesn't work for you, you don't lose face. And I'll say that to them. It's like, come on, let's make this work for you, both personally, for your group, for your division, for your agency, whatever it is. So to me, and it's not some fancy sales thing, like I mean it. I don't want people out there having been burnt by Jamie. It's like, so to me it's like having empathy for the scenario they're coming from, and saying no. It was interesting, so our first client, a guy called Brian, brilliant, quite harsh when he's not happy, but that's what you want in a customer, but he was also willing to give me some rope. But his introduction to our second and third customers, and those three are three of our biggest customers now. He introduced me and said, this is James, I think I've told you what we're doing with him, we're pretty happy, we're going to keep going. The only thing I'd say is, unlike most IT guys, he will say no to you, and he says it surprisingly often, which I thought was just the most crap introduction ever. I was just like, really? Like, thanks, buddy. What I didn't appreciate until afterwards was he basically said, if he says yes, he can do it. So it was actually, in a backhanded kind of way, a fantastic endorsement. So that's part of it. The other part of it is I guess the brand. We were laughing today about, sort of those anecdotal stories of when I think back. You know, and I remember being at an ATM and withdrawing, emptying the account and standing there and handing out $20 notes until it was gone. And it's like, well, have a break, however long it lasts. Let's hope we find some more soon. Another one that came up though was speaking at a conference, and it was the first conference I'd spoken at. The conference, you know, very conservative, all government. I mean, I stepped away from the lectern and they thought I was this crazy dynamic speaker. But got up, there was a really, really successful presentation, quite pivotal for us probably as a company. Went out for dinner with probably 30 or 40 of them and all this sort of great. We're walking back at the end of this first day of the conference and we get to this intersection. There's like 20 people still there. And they're all turning. I said, oh folks, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm heading that way. And they were like, aren't you staying at the conference centre? It's in Sydney at one of the shelters. I'm like, no, I'm just staying on the other side of the park. And someone said, you're not at the YHA, are you? And then I'm like, and then I didn't say anything and someone else goes, oh, no. And they named some other hotel, which is like super bling. Yeah. And they went, oh, he's probably staying there. And they're like, yeah, he's probably staying there. I said, good night, folks. Straight to the YHA. And so part of it was also that bit about, you know, I've never been deceptive in our position. I've never made out that we're anything other than we are. But I haven't necessarily highlighted it. And I spent a lot of time, you know, catching trains and buses and waking up with like really pissed 17-year-old or 20-year-old English blokes with too much underarm spray in backpackers and getting up at 7 in the morning, putting on a suit and tie, feeling like a complete loser. And going off and meeting pretty senior people and just talking to them about what we're there to talk about. It's not relevant where I slept. I hope. But if they had known that, I reckon they would have run. So I don't know, it's interesting.
Welcome to startups, really. YHA and business suits.
Brutal. But it's interesting, I mean, I guess there are agencies that try to position themselves as being about innovation. One of them ran a tender early on for us and said, it was the only one, I've only ever seen 2 that are good for us. And that was the first one. It's like, that's awesome, we could nail that. Criteria number 1, 3 years of profitable books.
This is a government agency.
Yeah. I phoned them up and said, look, what's the go? Like, we don't have 3 years of profitable books. And it was frustrating because the conversation I had with them, I said, so let me get this right. Do you want to know if we're going to be around in 3 years' time? Or do you want to know that we have 3 years of books? Because what's the, and you could have someone who's profitable and going to go out of business, and you could have someone who's not profitable, got $5 million in cash in the bank, and a burn rate of $50,000 a month. They're clearly going to be here, and you're saying that doesn't count? And the answer was yes, it doesn't count. So sometimes you do just hit brick walls, and you just got to go, cool, move on, find something else.
Can I ask, at what stages did you decide to bring on new staff, and how did you go about that?
Great question. Found it really hard to find people who, I guess, were in a position in just their day-to-day life to be able to be part of a startup, and also had the skills, and had the motivation, and I liked them. So I won't for a second pretend that was easy. Sometimes it's been a little bit serendipitous. Certainly finding Rob, our developer, was completely ridiculous. And that took 5 or 6 months and I met a lot of people. Another guy, Mark, he was the brother of a friend of mine and he'd been offered a retrenchment and he was pretty over what he was doing. He had a background as a marketing project manager. So I thought, awesome, he knows about marketing. I don't know anything about marketing. We met up, he's like, great, he joined us. Turns out he doesn't know anything about marketing either. But he's incredibly patient and he's just great with people. So from a customer service point of view, he's been brilliant. But to be frank, I mean, the first couple of years it was really challenging because we didn't really have that many customers to service. So now it's awesome and he's nailing it. But the first bit, it was tough, but he just really wanted to be there and he had skills I could see would be applicable. And I kind of couldn't let him go because then we would have a gap. Julianne I already knew. So it's kind of been pretty loose, and it's been a challenge. We only started actually doing recruitment this year, like hiring staff, and that's an interesting process. And it's an interesting process finding people who want the reality of being part of a small company, not just the, I guess in the last few years it's become quite cool to be in a startup. But sometimes the reality is not as bling as it sounds. So getting people who, it's like, you actually are going to have to tidy up the meeting room when you're finished, and you're going to do your own dishes, and you're going to do a whole lot of other stuff you haven't thought of. And in fact, you're going to have to work out to do it and then just do it before we've even seen it. So we've only got one person in the organisation with a JD. And that's a special kind of group of people that are happy to operate that way.
Yeah. Look, I had similar experiences, pain, with my previous business, and just thinking back, if you reflect on, basically a year in or so, do you regret at all of not getting extra funding of venture capital to relieve some of that pain?
Not for a second.
Yeah.
And part of that is because it would have been a unique kind of investor that would have let us make some of the pivots that we made. And we made some pretty brutal kills on some technologies that people were saying this is great, and we're saying, no, it's not going to work. Kill it, move on. And so I don't know that we would have had the freedom to be as dramatic in some of our decision making as we were.
Yeah.
And I guess it's like hindsight's 20/20. Now we've come out the other end of it. We own 100% of the business as the original founders. We've knocked back our first acquisition offer.
90.
No, there's the founders. No, there's a collective. I'm not the only shareholder. That's certainly the case. There's 6 shareholders. But yeah, it's great now. I tried to raise capital, and I was awful at it. I was,
Where from?
Pardon me?
Where?
I guess we were approached by one of the VC firms because they picked up on, I guess, the idea we were running, and they got me to go in and pitch for one of the, I guess, investor type groups, and I think I just baffled them. Like I just got in there and I had like 20 minutes and I just like told them all my good ideas. And they just sat there and went, what? Like, kind of seems exciting, but I still don't actually know where you're going with this. So I was a classic subject matter expertise with 3 too many coffees and a bucket of enthusiasm. I think the other thing, once I sort of worked out the formula of pitching, which is actually pretty straightforward when you think about it, and it's usually just dumb it down to the point where you feel slightly insulted and then dumb it down about 4 more times. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to put up a spreadsheet with an awesome hockey stick on it. I'm just not. Like if I don't 100% believe that I'm going to deliver that number and I would ask my mum to mortgage my house on it, I'm not going to go and pitch it to an investor. So I had some investors who told me straight up, I said, I love everything about what's going on, the people, the team you've got is incredible, that is great, but you just don't seem hungry enough and angry enough about the numbers you're going to hit. It's like, well, no, but we've always exceeded our targets quite dramatically in some cases, but yeah. Because the problem is if you go and escalate these massive forecast revenues, you also escalate these massive forecast costs, and it's really easy to spend money and you find yourself having spent money on a belief of an accelerated revenue stream that doesn't materialise. So we are very committed to trailing cost structures. So earn the money, then we spend it. We don't run a credit line.
You mentioned early on that you ran lean and you didn't pay for marketing. Do you pay for marketing now?
We've tried a few different things. I know there's probably a lot of marketing people here. The only people I've asked to leave the business have been people who we originally brought on in a marketing role. One of my frustrations was a lot of marketing people that we worked with, I think we're just working with the wrong people. We're really into these like really conceptual stuff and it wasn't immediate enough. Like a startup, you can't go in and treat it like ANZ Bank and let's do a brand strategy that's going to put you in good holding in 5 years' time. It's like, I need some money next month and I need you to take some accountability for that. Don't just tell me it's about brand. So that was one of the, I guess, the challenges that we had. Having said that, we've got some great marketing advice and it's made an enormous difference to us. We've started marketing We do a lot of it ourselves. We'll go and get ideas and advice from people, but then probably do the legwork ourselves. We're paying someone now to do that sort of work, but that's relatively new. We're doing probably our first true marketing campaign at the moment, which is novel. And it's interesting because I actually don't know if it's going to work in our market. You know, I think there's a big difference between selling and marketing, and the old idiom, you don't sell what you can market and don't market what you can sell. It takes a little while to work out, I think, what's going to work. So I think templating, you must do SEO. SEO is completely meaningless to my business because no one Googles what we do, as you said earlier, really clearly. SEO is brilliant for a lot of businesses. So it's just about working out what works, I think.
I might just take one more question, and because I know people are probably getting sore feet at the back. Got a hand up there. If you just want to stand up and ask a question.
So have you considered to rely largely on offshore resources, software development resources to reduce your OPEX or enhance your OPEX?
We haven't done that outside of, we use Elance and 99 Designs fairly extensively. I would say we off-task. So some sort of transactional stuff that our risk profile is really low. We haven't taken our development offshore. I'm not against it, we just haven't. And I think part of that is maybe a deficiency on my part to do really good specs. So I like sitting down with my developers and mapping it out. Now, having said that, if I was working with developers who had an offshore function, maybe it would work. But we haven't gone down that path ourselves. I'd love to use it more if it offered us some benefits, but I think we're probably not geared up for it in terms of the people we've got. It's incredible what you can do, though. I mean, like, it's yeah. I know there are a lot of people doing it very successfully, and I think it's been around long enough that people have learned the challenges and how to address them.
Cool. I might leave it at that, guys. Let's give a round of applause for James. Yeah, I'll leave you guys grab some snacks. I just want to thank CIPSA for hosting the place. They basically resource this party and give us a space. So there's some drinks just behind Katrina where the camera is, and also you're welcome to go upstairs. There's some more snacks there if there's not enough space around here. Thanks, guys.